Okay, welcome everybody to another ICF Toronto monthly member meeting. My name is Shahab Anari, and I'm joyful, privileged, and honored, as always, to be your host today. If you're a guest or a brand new member, please head over to the chat box and introduce yourself. We're very, very happy to have you with us today. As usual, I'd like to start today's meeting with a brief land acknowledgement to demonstrate the fact that ICF Toronto recognizes Indigenous lands, treaties, and peoples. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Let's take a few moments and reflect on this land acknowledgement. Okay, welcome everybody again. Today is all about coaching ethics. Our wonderful speaker today is zooming in from Hong Kong, where the local time is 5:30 a.m. You heard it right. Talk about commitment. 5:30 in the morning. Lola Chetti is an ICF MCC Master Certified Coach, and she's very much involved with ICF Global, especially in the ethics area. Today, she's going to talk about ethical maturity. And throughout her presentation, she's going to be sharing with us some scenarios where we can all discuss the ethical aspects of a coaching situation. Over the past few days, we emailed you a document provided by Lola called Ethics Vignettes. Hopefully you've received that document. Please have it handy because Lola is going to refer to that document throughout her presentation. If you haven't received it, don't worry at all. I'm going to put a link to that document so that in the chat box. So give me 1 second. If you haven't received that document, here is the link to it. Allow me to put it in the chat box. Here's the link to that document. Please have it handy. It's called Ethics Vignettes, and Lola is going to refer to it throughout her presentation. Without further ado, let's give Lola, 5:30 a.m. in Hong Kong, a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I sound a little bit hoarse. That's the time. And I often sound very hoarse. I'm super pleased to be with all of you this morning. And for you, it's good evening. And by the way, Shihab knows I was in Toronto only 2 weeks ago, working with exactly the IRB, the Independent Review Board. So really happy to be with all of you. And thank you for being here. So, Shahab, can I start the presentation now?
Yes, please.
Yes. So this morning, we will be spending 1 hour discussing ethics, and we hope to have about 15 minutes for Q&A. So I'll have a presentation for you. I think we have quite a number of people on the call here. Yes, absolutely. So, we'll probably at one point be dividing you into a few workout groups and then telling you which vignettes to work on. So I do apologize if sometimes I mess up the breakout rooms. I'm really not very tech savvy, but I'll be trying my best. Okay? And this is going to be a very interactive, I hope. So stop me, ask me questions. Don't think you'll be stopping me in my flow. Or the whole point is this exchange, and that's what I really love about speaking to my peers from ICF around the world. Okay, so if you will bear with me, I'll share my screen now. Absolutely. We've got this. So it was a bit of a struggle, but I'm saying struggle. The wording was, the struggle is the journey to coaching ethical maturity, and I'll be explaining why, and you'll understand why it was such a long title, I hope. So I'll just speak, give you a few words about me. I'm originally from Mauritius, and then quite young I went to Europe and studied in England, and have lived in Europe and Asia. So I have a master in coaching and consulting from INSEAD Business School. My specialization is organizational psychodynamics and leadership. So I design programs and I do psychodynamic coaching. In my past life, I was 10 years a barrister. Out of this 10 years in the judiciary, 5 a barrister, and around 6 I was at the bench. I've also designed an evidence-based coach training. So in my work, I try to integrate a lot of research for the simple reason, because it's proven, and then it's like standing on solid grounds. But I'm not a coaching school. It's more called a work of passion. What I deliver is only to 6 people a year. I'm a coaching mentor and supervisor. I have a commitment to supporting social projects, but importantly, within coaching, my commitment and my passion is ethics. And that's really why I'm here this morning. But really what I want to make sure, I'm not here as a specialist. I'm here as a colleague. And I'm here to share what I know and reflect together with you. And I invite you to pose the questions, because it's in really posing the questions that we can move forward and think when we come to ethics. So the next part of the presentation is explaining a little bit to you, what do we do at the Independent Review Board. So we look at ethics and regulatory oversight for coaches. It's completely volunteer. I've now been with them over 2 years. So you all know that we have a code of ethics, and where we take a pledge to maintain standards of professional conduct and fulfill our ethical and legal obligations as well. So at the ILB, we use the ethical conduct review, which is we call the ECR process. This process helps us review, investigate, and respond to any allegation of unethical practices and behavior of members in the when it's alleged that there has been a breach of a code of ethics. We oversee the whole ethical conduct review process. So as you know, we have a code of conduct also over and above the ethical code. The code of conduct looks at ethical practices and behavior when it comes to training, ICF training. At the ILB, we focus mostly on members' behavior and members' actions. We use the code of ethics, but we also use the values, the 4 values of ICF, which are basically professionalism, collaboration, equality, and I think it's humanity. Yeah, I've got it. It's early in the morning. And we also look at other material that support the ethical practice. It can be interpretative statements, but more than everything, the ethical code, the code of ethics doesn't actually tell us what to do in every situation. It's basically a process, a reasoning process. And what I want to do this morning is really, as a peer with you, not as an expert, go through this whole journey and reason through things, and reason through cases, reason through common challenges we can have. So, Shahab, I'm sure you've asked everyone that if you do have real cases, please bring them. it will be so much more real. All of the cases that I brought are cases that I've seen in my own practice, but then it will also be able to help you and reason together with you, right? Because again, I say it, I don't come as an expert. I come more as somebody who's completely passionate about the subject and would like to share with you. So let's start without ado. Where does coaching start? Where does ethical coaching start? If we look at history, certainly the code of law, the earlier code of law, starts from the code of Namu, and I apologize if it's my accent, and I'm not saying this right, 2,100 years before Christ in Iraq, in Mesopotamia. And it's actually the tablets, which are written in Sumerian language, are now in the Museum of Anthropology in Turkey. This is the earliest legal code in the world, 2,100 years before Christ. And then if we look at the code of ethics, it's derived from the medical codes. And the earliest medical code that we see in history, it's always good to look at where it comes from, is from Thomas Percival. In 1740, if I'm right, 740, he started writing the first medical codes and went on writing about other codes of ethics. And our code of ethics is derived from here. And as you see, it's like less than 300 years ago. So that's quite solid. And it's been evolving over time. So if we look at this, what is the code? What is a code of ethics? A code of ethics is an application of a set of values that dictate ethical professional conduct and constitute an integral part of professional identity. But if we have to put it simply, the code of ethics is basically having the intention of doing good, of being good and taking action and reasoning through a situation and thinking, how can I serve my profession? How can I serve my client? And then taking action on it. So it's also important to say that we are a self-regulated profession, and the code of ethics keep us unregulated as a profession, because what happens is that when there is a complaint, as a professional body, we look into it. So it, in most cases, prevent it, not that it should, but prevent it from going to the courts, but in some cases it does go there. But what the courts and the law of the land sees is that we are we self-regulate. And this is how important it is to have our own code of ethics. So the code of ethics allows us and keeps reminding us to be conscious of the impact of our behavior on others. And my own, coming from the judiciary, my own decision to join the IRB was actually not to look at what other people are doing, but more to keep myself on my toes. And I don't know how many times we say to ourselves, oh Lord, we hope that we don't forget. And that's because we are human beings. And it's so important to always keep ourselves really, looking our horizon. Are we doing the right thing here? Are we serving our role as coaches? Are we serving our responsibility towards our client? So when it comes to about doing good, we look at the code of ethics. What it is, it's a set of guidelines. It doesn't tell us what to do. But what we need is ethical reasoning. Is to be able to reason for cases and take the action. So if we look at it, when we are coaching, we are just not stretching the thinking of a client. There are lots of other dynamics which walk in. There are dynamics around trust, dynamics around safety, dynamics around power, the power differential between the coach and the coachee. And it's always good to know that in a coaching relationship, although we aim for equality, as a coach, we always have a little bit more power than our client. Does that make sense? And also to understand that when we work in organizations like me, my work is 99% every day in various organizations. There is such a multiplicity of contracts because I sign my contract with the organization. They are also my client. But very often there could be conflicts, and there are conflicts between the interest of the organization and the interest of my ultimate client, who's also my client. And how does the coach then deal with this? Multiplicity of relationships really bring a gray area, and more we are seeing it because there are so many more coaches who, like me, work on a daily basis in organizations now. So to have a code of ethics, to be speaking all of us about ethical reasoning is important because it helps us remain ethical, and remaining ethical legitimizes our profession. Any question? No? Any comment? Good. Okay, just stop me anytime, even when I'm presenting, because that's why I'm here this morning. It's to have a chat with all of you. So the first question is all of you, and you can unmute yourself, you can raise your hand. I'd like to see all of you. So I'm just going to open this chat. Can I do this? Do you worry about your coaching practice? Are you worried sometimes about your coaching practice? About, the level of ethics? Yes, who does? I do constantly. I'm always worried in the morning, worried that I don't get tired and say things I shouldn't be saying to the wrong person. So I think it's good to actually worry. It's actually good to feel uncomfortable all the time about ethics. I worry all the time. Every time I'm looking at a case, I'm not thinking, oh, what did they do? Woohoo, how dare they, and all that. But it's more about, oh my God, I hope I never do this. I hope I'm never in this situation, because we are all in situations, especially when you're coaching many people and you have so many relationships. Just think, in an organization, it can be the sponsor, it can be the payee, it can be HR, the head of talent, and then your client, if you're doing team coaching, and their colleagues. It's a minefield, but it's a minefield that we have to remain very, very conscious of. So why it's good to worry? It's because it keeps us not indifferent. The problem is when we start feeling very confident. When we start feeling very confident, we stop seeing. Because if you think of ethics is like the ocean. If you look at this and think, oh my God, why did she put the sea here? It's because it's like an ocean. It keeps changing. You're never in the same place, depending on people, depending on time, depending on organizations, depending on situation. And therefore, we have to be always very focused and mindful. Could there be an ethical issue here? And if we are in a practice, especially one-to-one, I think this is quite fair. It's more manageable. But if we are working in organizations and many people, if we think, oh, that my practice is devoid of ethical issues, it's an issue itself. Because there are always ethical issues. And it's about looking for them before they come to you. Constantly looking for them and thinking, what do I have to think of? What is information I shouldn't be speaking about? Why can't I be sharing? For example, working in an organization and being told that the regional CEO is going to, for example, step down. So you've had a chat with him and he says, I'm going to step down. That's why I would like you to come in and speak to the people. There's somebody else, but I haven't told them yet. How to make sure that when we are doing team coaching, this doesn't slip through. And believe you me, it's really tricky. There are times you're so well, anyway, things are going to change. And you think, I'm not supposed to say this. And when you're working with so many clients, it's very difficult. So how do we know that there is an ethical issue? Tell me a little bit. How do we know? How do we all know that there is an ethical issue? What are the first signs? Please unmute yourselves. All right. Oh, I can see in the chat. I can see people. Thank you for writing in the chat. Yeah, you spoke about coaching multiple members of the same company. Yes, Jill. Coaching a leader in his direct report. Absolutely. Working with parents and teens and couple coaching. Of course, because the parties all have conflicting needs and conflicting interest. Right? So all of you, and I'd like really your intuitive feeling around this. How do we know? Yes, can it be intuitive? Absolutely, Kurt. It is intuitive. It starts with a feeling. If we look at research, Passmore says that it starts with a feeling. And there is another researcher called Knapp, K-N-A-P, who says it's a gut feel. It can even be an emotion of fear. So don't disregard when you start feeling fearful. Don't disregard when you start feeling, oh dear, am I making mistakes here? Dig into it, lean into it, find out, because your body is telling you there is something, your brain is telling you there is something quite not all right. Maybe you'll find that it's absolutely fine. That'd be great. But you can also find out this is something I should be worried about, right? Yes, big ethical issues. Yes, Ahmad, it can be a big ethical issue depending on what the company or the person does. It depends on their behavior. In itself, it depends also how we contract. Contracting is very important with the organization. In the contracting, we can really manage the ethical issue. For example, being very clear that you won't be sharing information, what kind of information we would be sharing with the parties. Where is the confidentiality? So contracting helps a lot, but contracting doesn't cover every situation. There can always be surprises, right? And I've been, for example, saying that I won't reveal anything, but then you find out that your client is working directly against the interest of a company. Somebody asking you, I'm going to leave now and just ditch this project. I've had enough of this organization, Lola. Coach me on leaving. This conflicts directly because the company hired me to develop this person for succession planning. What do we do? Right? And there's always a solution. It may not be a perfect solution in ethics, but we can always find a good solution. And a good solution lies always, not always in complete transparency. It can be reframing that transparency, but a high level of transparency, certainly with your immediate client, but knowing where we draw the line as well. Feel I want to champion both parties, but not both parties are not present. Absolutely, because it's managing the interest of both parties. The pay is the client, the person you coach, or the persons you coach are your clients as well. So the first step is the feeling, this gut feeling, this feeling of unease. The second, it's about identifying where is the dilemma. Where is the dilemma in this question? Where is it? Where are the conflicting interests? Who are the parties? Identifying correctly, where are my roles and responsibilities as a coach? So the code of ethics is a guide, but the reasoning is really up to us. Any questions? I've been speaking for some time now.
Steve, you had your hand up. Do you have any questions?
I'm sorry, I didn't see Steve's hand.
Oh, that's okay. Lola, you identified the point of conflict that I was thinking about, which is coaching somebody for development and they announce that they want to leave the organization.
Yeah, in an organization.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes. If a person comes to you privately, that's absolutely fine. They decide the agenda, but it's a conflict with the payee, the person who's actually the payer, not the payee, the payer, the person who's actually paying you, right?
Right. And so, well, frankly, anytime I make profit, I question the ethics of it. And that's another one. Some coaches charge extraordinary amounts of money, and there's potentially an ethic there as well.
It can be, as long as the client, if a client depends on the contracting with the client. It can be because if a client is taking this decision with a very enlightened mind, that's absolutely fine. And that's why, if you see this year, ICF has come up with a table of fees as well. So that people can go on the ICF website and get information. But if a client accepts and there's a huge gap between the fees, it all depends what you are offering. Fees vary immensely in the world and depending on what the coach is offering. And here it's about clarity and transparency, as long as your client has not been led to believe certain things that he won't receive. As long as both clients know exactly what they're signing up for, then there would not be any ethical issues, right? So what we're going to do now, I'm looking at the time, my God, time flies. It's already 6 o'clock, so it's been 30 minutes. What we'll do is that, Shahab, please help me. My memory is now, I don't know how many vignettes I sent you.
Okay,
So
I have the document here. So
3, 4, 5 vignettes. So can we divide this into, since you are here, Shahab, and I'm so grateful to you being here, can we, still being here, so can we divide the group into 3 groups with, for example, one group group A, taking the first 2 cases, group B taking the number 3 and number 4, and group C taking number 4 and number 5 to discuss?
Of course. So I'll create 3 rooms. Room number 1, the folks in room number 1 will take on scenarios 1 and 2, right? Group number 2, the breakout room number 2, they will take on scenarios 3 and 4, you said? Right? And the third group, they will discuss the last scenario, scenario 5, right?
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. I'll create 3 breakout rooms. How long do you want the breakouts to be?
So it's 6:05. We want to give people at least, I think, 20 minutes.
20
would
minutes?
be a fair amount of time. And don't worry, even if you speak about one case, and I'll be coming as a fly on the wall. I hope I can join your group, and I'll be coming to join you and listen to your discussions. And after 20 minutes, we'll come back in plenary and discuss what we've been speaking about.
So folks, I've created 3 rooms. Room 1 will be discussing scenarios 1 and 2. Room 2, they will be discussing scenarios 3 and 4. And room 3, they will be discussing the last scenario, scenario 5. And if you haven't received the document, I'm going to share the link to the document in the chat box one more time. Please click on this link. You will access the ethics vignettes. There will be 5 of them, and based on your room number, you will discuss certain scenarios. Okay, there you go. Enjoy your conversation.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. It was so interesting to hear you speaking to each other. What I'd like you to, I'd really invite you to do now is each group, if you could take, 5 to 7 minutes because of time, and share with the other groups, what was your learning? Maybe we'll start with group 3, because I didn't have, I ran out of time, and I apologize. I couldn't be a fly on the wall with the third group who spoke about ethical contracting. Could you start, please?
That was us, right? Yes. So we did we had Ella, who we coached a year ago, and we're now hired as a consultant. And the dilemma is Ella has potentially been sharing confidential information, and so is in a position where the organization isn't sure what to do with her. And so we were asked to provide an opinion on the process for how they would go about dealing with Ella. And we had a lot of discussion, and then we kind of took a breath and said, wait a minute, we've been asked to comment on the process. And if that's the case, we can do that without disclosing or divulging anything about Ella, about the individual, because we're being asked to contract on a process. And it's a new contract, whereas the coaching contract with Ella was separate. So that was sort of one piece we came to. But before we got there and after we got there were lots of questions around, do the people who are now looking at Ella and concerned about her know that she had a coach? Did they know that it was me who was her coach? If not, is that something that I can disclose? And I think, ultimately sort of talked about, no, we don't disclose who we coach unless the client says you can tell people that I've coached with you. We talked about our responsibilities to the sponsor, talked about, if we had known that she was doing this when we were coaching her, what would we have done? That was a different ethical dilemma that we talked about. Who would we disclose that to, or how would we go about doing that? And talked about how, regardless, we need to make sure it's not our agenda. We're coming to it. I think Joe used the word sort of open-hearted and in that coaching stance of where we're at. Trusting our intuition around where we step in or step out. Noticing how we made lots of assumptions, and we need to check those assumptions. Also, Steve made the point about having a network so that when there are coaching dilemmas, you've got people you can go to talk them through, because they're absolutely gray, and not always very clear. And so between assumptions and not being careful about what we're really being asked for, we can get into the muck. And so having a network, and some of that network is ICF, and they've got people you can talk to, they've got a helpline, they've got discussion groups, etc. So those were some of the main things. Anybody else want to add anything?
So before anybody wants to add, I'd like, because we discussed this case with group 2, I'd have 2 questions for the group who thought it's 2 roles, 2 distinct roles. I agree with you. But then I'd ask a question. How would you feel if you were Ella and you've confided in this coach, told them your deepest secrets, and then you find out a year later that this coach advised on the process used for you to leave?
Interesting.
Because I work as consultant and coach, I know. So, and now put yourself in the coach's shoes now. What does that do to the feeling of safety? Because we have a duty of safety towards our client. Second, how does the coachee, who's a lay person, know when is it I'm acting as a coach and when is it I'm working as a consultant? Because they're seeing me in and out of this organization. And then link it to the perception. Coaching, ethics is also about not just ethics, but having a perception. There shouldn't even be a perception of an ethicality. So what would we do if you think about these 2 questions?
Remove yourself.
Exactly. Very good, Donna. this would be the best situation here. And don't forget that ICF, the Code of Ethics, says very clearly that when we present ourselves as coaches and we use as credentials, it doesn't matter that we teacher, facilitator, or consultant, we're still bound by the Code of Ethics.
One of the questions we had, Lola, in that group was when we have that confidentiality, right? Is that only for the life of the contract, or is that for a lifetime?
That's a really good question, which hasn't been decided. I think it's putting yourself in the, would you go and see a coach and talk about your deepest secrets if there was an expiry date on confidentiality? Put ourselves, empathy questions are really great because coaching is such a human profession. Would I? Let's say I come and see a divorce coach, tell them everything about my life. And then I think, okay, in 2 years, this coaches can just go and speak about it without any problem. Would we go to coaches? Because at the end of the day, we look at coaching. It's such an important profession, but it's a profession that rests. Psychological safety and trust are the hard currency of coaching. There is no coaching, and psychological safety and trust doesn't have an expiry date.
Yeah, when we talked about it, that was sort of that's the place we landed, but it was an interesting question to talk about, right? Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a broader question of, there are a couple of outstanding things here as well. There's a question of law. So if somebody is breaking the law, are we obliged to share that information? So there's an ethic there, and I think the answer is clear, actually. There's also a question of whether it's ethical to be acting as a coach and then acting as a management consultant in the same organization, which a lot of coaches do, and I don't know whether that's ethical.
I do actually, Steve. I'll tell you, I can share with you, there are ethical considerations. It's about being able to identify, but in the role itself, no. If I'm working with very different people as a consultant and very different people as coaches, and in an organization, the one I'm using globally, I'm meeting today, has 35,000 people, and I'm working with different countries, there is no conflict. As long as I know what I'm doing with whom, and people are very clear in each case who I am. One. Secondly, you spoke about, I'm sorry, what did you say the first
When people
time?
break the
Legal, the law. What takes priority, the law of the land or the code of ethics?
I know what my answer is to that. I don't know what the ICF's answer is to that.
Well, it's the law of the land.
Yeah.
We are all subject to the law of the land, all of us. And there are cases, which I hope not a lot, that can be also criminal. And then it's for the law to look after it when it goes beyond a certain point.
That's usually in the contract, right? When you sign when the coach and the client signs a contract, it says if there's a legal reason why, we have to breach it, then you agree that this is going to be the only reason why.
Absolutely. We do contract that if there's a breach, and anyway, if we subpoenaed as coaches, does confidentiality still apply? No. And that's why we have to destroy our notes and our clients when the session is finished. Because as long as we have them, we're duty bound to actually present them as well. So I think this is what makes our profession amazing, because it keeps us on our toes and it keeps us there to serve others. Ahmed. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
ethics do not have geographic boundaries. I think ethics, especially ICF, is international, but the law of the land has geographic boundaries. So the application of which is senior, the law of the land or ethics, will vary from one country to another. There might be some countries where the law is very lenient and others where it might be strict, and not just coaches, but therapists and other people who deal with confidentiality, between the lawyer and the client, confidentiality, they might be subject to those rules and regulations. So it is a very complex issue, in my opinion.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. For example, let's look in one of the countries that I absolutely adore where I lived. If you work with a person of a different gender, you shouldn't be together alone in a room, because it's the law, this law that applies. And you may be an ICF coach, but if you breach this law, it's not a defense to say I was coaching. The law of the land takes precedence. There are also cultural aspects. There are legal aspects.
Yeah.
Yep. Any questions? I really like the way that you are all reasoning. I'd like to hear another group. Yes, Jennifer.
I'm echoing a question someone wrote in the chat, which was about destroying notes. Is that something that most of you do? I'm just curious. It's, I don't know if it's in our code of ethics. I was told when we were training, it was probably a good idea not to take notes so that you don't ever have to actually provide them. But I'm a scatterbrain menopausal woman, and if I don't write it down, it never happened. So curious to see if I'm the only one who takes notes, and if so, is everyone else destroying their notes?
I'm right there with you, so I can actually tell you, Jennifer, I totally empathize. So I have notes. It doesn't say it, but we have data privacy provisions, and the best way to protect our clients is to get rid of the notes. So it's our own reasoning here. So I'd really like to hear another group around, because we have a little bit of time, around your ethical reasoning. What did you learn? What was the process?
So we discussed the other scenario also, where the person was leading development events for coaches, and then a leadership company offered him that if you encourage the people to take our programs, you will get 6 months free membership. And we didn't reach a full 100% unanimity on it. There were differences of opinion. Some people were saying that this is unethical no matter what happens. Other people had opinion that if it is very transparent, and if the program has previously given good results and there is nothing wrong with the program, then you are providing leadership, kind of leadership to the coaches, and you tell them that for you the benefit is that you get this membership, but the program is excellent, take it. So again, there were differences of opinion, and somebody else from our group, maybe if I misunderstood, can correct me.
So it's excellent. It's the reasoning. That's what we want to see. The reasoning is who's losing out? How are we benefiting? So it doesn't matter whether the program is good or not. It's about transparency. If we told everyone, this is what I get as a result, are you comfortable with this? Then there's no problem. But if we don't tell people, think of it, and they find out, all of us, and that's why even today in professionalism, I was really pleased to be able to do that for ICF, to speak about today when you look at values of professionalism, even in private coaching contracts, if we are contracting with another coach, we can ask for full transparency around the contract. Of course, the coach can say, I won't answer, I will not give you the answer. But then you have a choice to say, do I walk out and do I still stay? But we should be asking for transparency, trust, transparency, equity, psychological safety. All these are the foundations of coaching over and above methodology. And honestly, when you think of it, aren't we proud to think about it, that we do this? So because of time, I really wanted to introduce you to, we have only 5 minutes, and I'm sorry about this. It was such interesting conversation. I'd like to introduce you to a framework. I'll be sending this to Shahab afterwards, so that he can share with you a framework for ethical reasoning. So as we've all known, there is no definite answer. The struggle is what gets us to the best possible answer. What we should think of is, are we interfering in our responsibilities to our coaching? Is the decision that we take interfering to our ability to best serve our coachee or coachees, right? And a great, really good framework would be the framework of, there's Jonathan Passmore. Can you see this? Yep. So awareness, this is what we did today. We look at our code. Does it fall within the code? We look at our contract. We look at values. All these are really pretty good indicators. We classify, is that a dilemma? We take time, and I love it. Someone said, I think it was Glennie, who said we should be speaking to people. Absolutely. We should be taking advice. I don't know how many times I've gone to people, Glennie, and asked for advice around what would you do in my place? Because when we're in a situation, it can get really difficult to find way through it. Initiate options. Evaluate the options. Evaluate how does this fit when it comes to the relationship, comes to serving my client, serving the payer, serving all the people I contracted. Then even innovate. You know, when it's not innovate, it's actually novate. Novate, it's about trying and seeing whether it's worked and then sharing it with other coaches. And that's why I talked about even when we share in a group. And you know what? For me, the best is asking, would I become comfortable if I was the coachee here? Whether it's the organization or the other person, and then the best, the star of the show, which always gets me and makes me take a direction, is this one. Would I be comfortable if this was published in the newspapers tomorrow? I tell you, this gives you the answer immediately. If this was published in the newspaper tomorrow, what would I like to have done already? Because it's a question that we as lawyers also ask ourselves. So would I be okay if I were this client? Would I be okay? Sometimes we can say, yes, we were, but I was a teacher here. Here I was a coach. But then if you're in the place of the client, what is the perception? How did I? The responsibility is for us to create clarity around our role. I'd like to, because we already, oh my God, 6:44. I'd like to hear from you. If you're not in a hurry, I'll just take 2 more minutes and ask if you have any questions, if you have any, anything that you'd like to share. What was the experience of going through this mini workshop, mini discussion with me? I hope there was learning.
This has been really interesting, Lola, and what's really resonating for me is the piece around putting yourself in the coachee's shoes. Mm-hmm. If I do this, how will they feel, and how will it impact them? So that's the nugget I'm taking away. So thank you.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. It's such a pleasure to meet all of you and to discuss with colleagues that we can't meet, but meeting online is fantastic. Any other question? Anybody else? Yes, Jennifer?
Sorry, I don't know how to put my hand up electronically. You mentioned it earlier, the idea of perception, and that's where I'm really struggling in real life. So I'm wondering if you can comment on this. I've got someone who's asked me to coach an employee. I did my first interaction with the employee. She's then come back and told me, oh, we've been listening to his phone calls and reading all his emails, and he's behaving badly, so we're going to pull coaching from him. She then emails me the day after and says, he thinks you told me everything he said to you in the coaching session, which I said nothing. So the perception on his part is that I've shared something. I haven't, but I can tell him I haven't shared anything, but he doesn't know they've been reading all his emails about how unhappy he is. So I am smack dab in the middle of a big old pickle. And, it's one thing to know in my heart that I didn't share the information. And I want to reach out to him, but he doesn't even know they've told me. Like, it's a big guessing game. It's quite, I think, unethical.
I am so sorry. And here you're contracting with two parties. Yes. And ask yourself, you need to you have confidentiality around reading of letters, what's happening to trust with your client, Jennifer? So I'll ask a question. Right. I want the answer. What's happening to trust between you and your clients right now?
Right.
And can you afford to keep on coaching given the state of trust in this relationship?
Exactly.
I'm not giving you the answer.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's really, and coaching methodology works wonders. And every time, it's not about giving an answer, it's asking the right questions. The questions will give us the answer for ethics.
Thanks.
Can I ask for a favor from all of you, please? Can I take a picture with you if you don't mind? If you mind, you can switch off your camera. I'd love to take a picture with all of you. I'll put it on LinkedIn because I love putting on LinkedIn and saying, oh, I did this with colleagues from ICF because I'm really proud of it. I love it. Can you all take a picture?
Sure.
I'll take a picture now. We have two screens. Thank you for agreeing to this. I'm so grateful. Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure working with all of you this morning. I really hope that there was learning. And, you can all find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to be in touch with you. If we have questions, we can reason together. Thank you very much.
Fantastic presentation, Lola. That was exceptional. Thank you so much. Do you still have 3 more minutes? Because
always.
Steve and Alicia have their hands up. Folks,
of course.
Lola has told me that she has another meeting at 7. So if you folks can be brief, I'd appreciate it.
No worries. I leave home at 7:30. I have a full day.
Oh, yeah?
Work.
Okay. Okay, Steve, go ahead.
Lola, I'm curious to know, given your experience as a coach and a lawyer, what kind of supervision do you access? Do you access a coach as your supervisor? And how often do you do that?
I am still coached. I am still supervised every year. And I've been working, and I'm an MCC with 13 hours because it means nothing. Your credential ethics is separated from credentials. I've been coached from year one, supervised from year one. We can do normative supervision, which is around ethics. We can do formative supervision, which is about the coaching methodology, how we coach and the methodology of coaching. And we can also do restorative supervision, which is around the stress that we feel, not knowing, sometimes the vulnerability that we feel. I personally think that supervision is essential. So even though I am supervised, and actually my supervisor is from Toronto. My last supervisor. She and I work, and she's a PCC. And she's absolutely fantastic. And next year I go and choose somebody else. And it doesn't matter that I supervise coaches and I supervise groups. And it's better to work in groups when you're working in supervision because you learn from each other. I learned so much vicariously by others' experience.
Thank you.
Alicia, did you want to ask anything?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. One of the things that came up for me when we were working on our case study was the question around insurance. And so just would love to hear your thoughts on, I know we're all supposed to have insurance. I also know there's a lot of questions around insurance. So love to hear your thought on that.
It's not any, I'll give my own opinion here. As a peer, I've been insured because as a lawyer, I was insured from day one. And I tried to be insured, and this just reminds me I better check my insurance this year. I have professional indemnity insurance because it's also, we are professionals. Now, as professionals, we need to have insurance. We protect our clients also that way, not just ourselves. And I remember being in Malaysia, being the only person at that time who said that she was insured. Nobody else was, even when I came to Hong Kong. And now the ICF in Hong Kong is doing these group insurances so that coaches can access reasonably priced insurance when they adhere to an insurance in group. It's really important to have professional indemnity insurance. I think it protects us, protects our clients.
Thank you.
Okay, Lola, thank you so much for your time and generosity.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
We really appreciate you zooming in from Hong Kong today. You started your day at 5:30 a.m. Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Have
a great evening.
You mentioned you're on LinkedIn. We can connect with you on LinkedIn.
Please, I'd love you. And I'm going to post the beautiful pictures that we took. I am so happy to have spent time with you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much. And all the best to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.